Well, greetings all. Me and the Gracie Cat, we're here. The old grumpy gardener is back on the air again. You know, thinking back a number of years while I was living in California when they passed the medical marijuana initiative there, I remember that I voted for it. Okay, but I didn't really vote for it at the time because I saw the wonderful medical properties of this plant. No, I, like most Americans, I knew this plant as a drug that you got intoxicated on. That's how I saw it, and the main reason that I went ahead and voted on the medical proposition at the time was because, you know, I believe that when they're banning plants, that this is plant fascism, and I never saw the U.S. government's viewpoint on this herb to be correct. And so I said, hey, this is going to mess with the feds bad. So I said, yes, at the time. And now, I knew there were a few medical uses at that point in time. I mean, obviously, because it induces hunger, you know, you get hungry munchies. It's great for wasting, you know. And, well, no, it'll elevate a down mood. And so it can be good for, you know, people who are, you know, maybe wasting away, dying from cancer, or they have terrible AIDS or whatever. Things that will help elevate the state of mind a little bit. You know, it's not permanent, not a fix, but it's a good Band-Aid. There's not a lot of side effects. Well, anyway, that's the way I saw it. But boy, I've been changing my mind over the years so much. This is, I mean, I still obviously realize, yes, this is an intoxicating substance, just like vodka or anything else. You know, you can get loaded on it. But I've begun to understand the medical values of it, perhaps when I was younger. I didn't have so many medical issues. Yeah, right? Or at least I didn't pay attention to them. As I got older, I pay more and more attention to things like, you know, high blood pressure. I pay attention to things like insomnia, the inability to sleep. Now, the inability to sleep is a very, very common affliction with age. I know so many people who are over 60, 65 who just don't get a full night's sleep anymore. Yeah, that's... generally speaking, my sleep pattern usually ends by 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I can fall asleep 8 or 9 o'clock after the sun goes down, but come 1 o'clock, there I am. I'm on the surface. And then well, without help, there are times when I can just lay there. An hour goes by, another hour goes by. You know, I got to get up, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, and so on, but not getting much sleep after that. You know, that's why Gracie finally gets me out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, and so I give up at that point. But over time, I discovered that it was entirely possible to use medicinal cannabis as a sleep aid. There are probably a number of cannabinoids in there that will do this. The Delta 9 from the drug hemp will put you to sleep. Indica varieties are known for what they call couch lock. But the Delta 8 THC, which is from the industrial hemp and is technically a legal thing anywhere, that one will also induce sleep. CBD, it creates a restful state and some drowsiness too, without the intoxication that the Delta 8 or Delta 9 will give you. You get high with those, along with getting sleepy. With CBD, it's relaxing, sedating. It has an effect on the mind, but it's not tremendous. Anyhow, I had been using a product of industrial hemp, Delta 8 THC, that a friend of mine makes. he's in one of those states where they didn't have recreational cannabis, but they have industrial hemp. And so he's been processing that into this high grade of a honey oil that is pretty much pure 90-some% Delta-8 THC. And I had been using it as a sleep aid. Yeah, that's mostly. And then in the process, if any of those who saw one of my last videos on this subject, I eventually realized that it was expanding the blood vessels in my body, and it was alleviating my high blood pressure for me. That was amazing. The plant that they wanted to put me in jail for if I used it, it actually is what is saving my life these days. And so there is positively a medical application for the cannabinoids in expanding constricted blood vessels. It doesn't happen with infrequent users. The infrequent user actually gets a spike in blood pressure and a spike in the heart rate from using this. But if you're a constant user, you're using it medically, so you're taking a dose of it daily, it does. It will relax the blood vessels. And so you won't find, if that is your problem, stiffening, hardening of the arteries, that you will find that your blood pressure goes down to something near normal. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But I had actually originally been using this as a sleep aid, and it was pretty good. It worked pretty well. The only problem was formulation, and formulation has so much to do with this. The Delta-8 hash oil that I get is very stiff. It doesn't run easily at all. You got to pull on it, and I would mix it with canola oil or olive oil. Lately, I've begun mixing it with pure hemp oil from hemp seed, just because it sounds cool. No particular reason. So I've made a product that is 100% pure hemp. Okay, with it, and I take it and put it into gelatin capsules. Use a dropper or a syringe and fill the capsules with it, cap them. And at first I was worried that the oil would soften the capsule, but it doesn't. Okay, the gelatin is oil resistant, and so you can make up dozens of these, put them in a jar, and set them aside. Well, it was working great on my blood pressure. Yeah. It was working just amazingly, but it wasn't working so well on my sleep. I was managing again to about 1 o'clock, but while using the Delta-8, it would pretty much lose most of its effect that would cause slumber by about 1 in the morning. It would wear off. Now, I discovered that was probably because of the way I was formulating it. The fact that it was in oil and being taken as a capsule, that it was dissipating and passing through the body really fast. It took it a while to dissolve and become active, but once it became active, it didn't last very long. So I had also, over time, created canna butter. I have a video that seems fairly popular on making the cannabis butter. And I'd use that in cooking. Mostly brownies, but it's been turned into peanut butter cookies and a bunch of other things around here before. And I had used that originally as the sleep aid until I had run across the Delta-8. Well, the Delta-8 was a lot more convenient. It was really easy, and I didn't have to bake a pan of brownies, and it wasn't fattening. There is a problem if you're using, cannabis cookies or brownies to induce sleep. Well, there's the old, don't eat after 7 thing. You want to give yourself a 12-hour fast in there, So if you're going to start eating breakfast at 7 a.m., then stop eating at 7 p.m. so you have at least a 12-hour stretch for the body to, process and empty itself. Well, obviously, if you're going to sleep at night, you need to eat the brownies ahead of time. or the cookies or whatever they are. But you need to eat them early enough that they begin to digest, because it can take a while. It doesn't necessarily hit right away. Well, I suggest that you eat them before 7. That's my suggestion. That way they'll be pretty much digested by morning. It's a little bit of a heavy thing to be eating late in the evening, I admit. And I suppose the stronger you make them, the less brownie or cookie you have to eat. But the stronger you make them, the worse they taste. Some people, I can't abide by it. Yeah. the taste of the cannabis in the food. Oh, God. I've heard this before. Me, I don't notice it. I guess I don't eat it because it's delicious, and I really just don't notice it much. So it depends on how sensitive you are in that regard. Well, it turns out that when you put the cannabinoids into a brownie as cannabis butter, or as using hash oil, it lasts longer. Yeah, the stuff takes much, much, much longer to move through the system. And so it gradually time releases in your stomach. And as it moves through the GI tract, it gradually absorbs. I have had the sensation before that some of it didn't even process until it got into my intestines, and my intestines will fall asleep. I've had that sensation before. It can be quite strong. Depending on how you made them. And if they're really strong, you may feel them all the way down through your body. It's possible. But I've discovered that using brownies or cookies where the stuff is embedded in flour, with nuts and sugars and stuff like that, it will hold me throughout the entire night. This is the difference. I'm awake by 1 o'clock in the morning if I'm using, like an oil-based type product. I'm awake before midnight if I tried to smoke it before I went to bed, because smoking, at best, hour and a half to 2 hours. There's a few strains I've seen over the years out there that hold longer than that. A few go out 3 hours maybe, but that's about it. And they're pretty much worn off. And you'll probably find yourself coming up if you have a problem with sleep and you smoke before sleep. It'll put you down. I'm sure it will, especially if it's indica. But it's not going to keep you there. And I found the same, again, with oil-based edible capsule-type things, or gummies, too. Same thing. But when it's embedded in a cake-like brownie or cookie or something on that order, you'll probably still be feeling it in the morning. Now, if you are a person, unlike myself, who's retired, there's going to be some juggling here, a balancing act about getting yourself off to work after doing this. Hopefully, most of you who are aged and having trouble with sleeping are already retired, and it isn't going to matter because you can get up, make a pot of coffee, read the newspaper, watch the news, talk to the cat, and then finally, somewhere around 7 or 8 in the morning, go over and, fry an egg and put it on an English muffin or something. That sort of morning that us retired type people might just have. So, the intoxication from the cannabis, the residual in the morning, is not that important. Some people find it very distasteful. Yeah, I know Ellen has used it for sleep before, and she cannot stand waking up in the morning still high. Me? I don't care. I just don't get that much of a reaction from the stuff, I guess. Anyway, I seem to get most of the positives and not too many of the negatives out of this plant. It certainly helps me sleep, and it also reduces my blood pressure. What more do you want? I mean, my goodness. And it's a massive anti-inflammatory. Yeah, and well, if there's one thing that kills a person, it's inflammation. That's pretty much where all of us leave the world. The joints swell up, everything swells up, even the brain, becomes inflamed, and so on with age. So anti-inflammatories, again, are very good medicine. Yeah, like I said, I voted for that medical proposition in California just to stick one to the feds, but I'm learning different. This is a very valuable medical plant. And it was only 70-some years ago that 3 greedy people, I guess best way to put it, I'd call them something else, but that screwed it all up. But for thousands of years, this had been the farmer and the pharmacist's friend. It had been the doctor's friend for thousands of years. It's the beginning of pharmacy in China. I mean, we'll go back 5,000 years. There's testament to using this plant medically and using it recreationally. And so, this thing about, it needs more study is that BS. Anything you want to know about it, you can see already by looking at the face of the planet. It was only 70 years ago that you ended up with, DuPont, who had a patent on nylon and knew he couldn't compete against hemp for making rope and sails unless he could smash down the American hemp farmer. And so working with William Randolph Hearst, the media mogul there in the West Coast, they began a campaign of yellow journalism smearing cannabis, claiming it was dangerous, evil, and whatnot. And then they teamed up with the government through Harry Anslinger, who he would have been what they used to call the G-men. He was the head of that. He would have pretty much later on, J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI. It was before the FBI. Okay, we didn't have an FBI at the time. But Anslinger ran this stuff, and he was a notorious racist. Such a poor man. Anyway, he hated anything with a brown skin. He knew that African-American jazz musicians smoked the stuff. He knew that Mexicans smoked the stuff, and the Mexicans had a name for it. They called it marijuana. And so that English bastardization became marijuana. And that's what we still sort of call it today. But that was Anslinger using a racist term to denigrate the plant because that was Mexican slang. See, not an official name, and it's still kind of hanging in there when they say medical marijuana, but it is very racist origins. You will notice that I refer to the plant as cannabis. Because it's not racist. It's polite. It's proper. I'd call it grass. I'd call it pot. I'd call it weed. Any of the other American slangs for this thing, but it's cannabis. Anyway, that's how it got that bad. Okay, and it was a collusion. Industry, media, and government working together. They smeared it. They managed to get Congress to pass, bills that put it on a Schedule 1, made it illegal for anybody to touch it, use it, or do anything with it. And now we've been suffering with that for 70 years out of a huge history of this being a positive plan. Most of us haven't gotten over it. I still see others experiencing PTSD over the issue because it was such a dangerous thing at one point. Yeah, so I have friends and people I know around me that this frightens the living hell out of them. Yet, that's how bad the government messed everybody's minds up. I know the government's been wrong all along. I know I've been right on this subject, and I've been proving myself more right all the time as I find more and more medical applications of this plant. It grows in a garden, folks. Yeah, it's an easy plant, too, basically. This is not a complicated plant. There are a few strains that are difficult to grow, but in general, the plant is a weed. It's just it's an easy crop, and it's extremely useful. Just imagine that. How many different pharmaceuticals, blood pressure medication, sleeping pills. It's good on the gut. It might replace your Prilosec to a certain extent. If you have problems with your stomach, there's so many different things here, and it grows in the garden. That's the point. You don't have to buy it from Squibb or Abbott or J&J. They'd love to sell it to you, but it's a little too late. All right, so there you go. If you're gonna use it, if it's recreational, roll it, smoke it, put it in the pipe, smoke it. You're never going to probably smoke enough of the stuff to cause yourself any real serious problems worse than a sore throat. There isn't a lot of history on cannabinoids and cancer. It's the reverse, actually. They claim that the cannabinoids can be anti-carcinogenic. So, we haven't got that tobacco problem. But if you're vaping it, watch out. And this is medical or recreational, it don't matter. That's this THC suspended in oil. So you're inhaling oil. All right. Lymphatic pneumonia is caused by too much fat in the lungs. You can get it by vaping. And so that's not a good way to do this. Eating is the safest, best way. It amplifies the intensity of the plant about tenfold. Yes, because the liver will do conversion of THCA into THC active at about 10 to 1, so that you will get better bang for your buck when you're eating it. Now, it will not come on immediately. Yeah, you got to wait a while when you're eating it. You have to go through the stomach a bit before it starts to become active, so you don't get an immediate impact. I guess that's a negative. Sometimes that's a real negative, because if it seems to be taking too long and people eat 2 more brownies, and next thing you know, you're like, wow, where am I? What happened? That happens. It happens too frequently. There is no toxic threshold here, really, but you can overdose on cannabis very easily with edibles. So, be cool, learn how much, and especially if you're making your own, you never really know exactly. You gotta be pretty exacting, precise sort of a person, but even still, the plants vary, when you're making this cannabis butter. I've never seen 2 batches of it out of my kitchen that were identical. They always vary a little bit. Some will be more potent. Some are greener and taste worse. Others are not so good. They tend to be greener and not as potent when I cook a lot of male plants. So I don't throw the males out. They have cannabinoids in them, and when you're making butter, it will draw into the mass, but it usually makes it taste worse. I have partners and friends who prefer the butter using a percentage of male plants, because it's not as whoppingly devastating as the stuff that uses all female plants. I use trash. It's the leaves, the clippings, anything that a person wasn't going to say go ahead and smoke, except sticks and roots and seeds. That all goes in the cooking pot. So any bit of leaf or anything like that, all the trim. That's why in the recipe I gave under canna butter is 4 ounces to 1 pound of butter. That's because it was just leaf clip that I was using. Now, if you want a more potent butter and using less material, if you're using flowers, they're good flowers, you can get it down to 1 ounce to a pound of butter. Okay, so it depends on the potency of what you're starting with as far as how much of it you might want to cook into the butter. So as you can see, things kind of vary from time to time there. So you want to watch for that. I myself have had a few surprises over time when I, cook canna butter and suddenly for some unexplained reason found out that it was really strong. Yeah. But if you're using it for sleep, it doesn't matter that much, because you're not going to be driving your car when you're sleeping, You're not going to be talking on the telephone or going to work or anything like that while you're sleeping. So you sleep most of it off. It has a negative effect on dreaming. Yeah, it tends to fracture dreaming to some extent. It isn't as consistent and intense when you use cannabis to sleep. But the alternative is no dreaming too, because you're not sleeping. And you do dream. You will dream. But your dreams will be more fractured. They're just not going to be as consistent, I guess, the best way to put it. Alrighty. There we go. There's my current word on cooking with cannabis and medical conditions. Aloha. Hang loose.